Good morning and welcome to another day at Shenfield Shed. We've got an early start and as you can see 2.5 degrees in the shed, so a little bit fresh. So let's get this heater on and get warming. Today we're going to be brewing a black IPA. Menu taken from the malt miller. I've also purchased all my ingredients from the malt miller, so thank you to the team. 7.5 kilograms of Marisota. We've got 500 grams of Wayman's Carafar Special Type 3 and 500 grams of Crystal 200 and a variety of hops with the Chinook, which was my surprise as we've only got Chinook in the actual boil. Then we've got Cascade and Simcoe at the end of boil or flame out, and then we've got some dry hopping with Cascade and Simcoe. But what I'll do, we'll now get the water prepared and I'll be back shortly. I put 27.5 litres of water into the boiler. I use bottled water. It's cheap and cheerful from Aldi, and due to that I can be consistent with my chemicals. For that type of water I only need to use 7 grams of gypsum, which I will add to the water. Now obviously, as I've mentioned before, this is 2.5 litres per kilogram of grain, but we also need to ensure we include the 6.5 litres of dead space below the Brewster beacon. Obviously today we are brewing on the Brewster beacon. So let's go ahead, add the gypsum to the water. There we go, that's all in the water now. We'll let that stay there and we'll return once we're back up to temperature. Today is going to be one of the biggest malt grains I've done. Generally I'm around about 5 kilograms, but this comes in 8.5. And as you can see, when you put it all together, there's a hell of a lot of grain. You've got the Wymans, which is the Carafar Special Type 3, again 500 grams. 500 grams of caramel, and the Marisota is our base malt at 7.5 kilograms. We'll wait till the water's up to temperature and we'll begin our mashing. We've now reached the correct temperature for mashing in. We're about a degree and a half above where we want to be, but due to the cold weather today, I thought it best just to go a little bit warmer before we start the mashing process. As you can see, grain basket has been inserted with bottom filter on. Always remember, put the white cap on. Last thing you want to do is your grain going down. So what we'll do, we'll begin adding the grain, a little bit at a time, and mashing in. What I'm going to do on this video is, rather than show you physically mashing in all of the grain, I'll just mash in a little bit, and when I'm halfway through we'll show you the update. An old saying is every day's a school day, and as we can see here I'm at the limit of the Brewster beacon. Maybe next time I should try to go for a 21 litre brew rather than a 23. Okay, the mash is in, top filters on, and recirculation pump has just started. As you can see, we are definitely at the top. We have not got to go much further. You can see the overflow hole just on there, that's an emergency hole for overflows, and this one here, so it's definitely going to be a brew today. As you can see, water's starting to go down that one, the malt, sorry. So what I'll do now, slow that pump down and take it time to settle. We're now halfway through the mash. As you can see, look at that lovely colour. This is definitely going to be a black IPA, and the smell is beautiful. Also carried out a quick pH test from the strips, and I think we're okay there. We're looking at 5, maybe just over 5 on the pH, so very happy with that. So I'll come back when we start sparging. We'll now get into the end of the mashing. On this particular mash, we done a 2-stage mash. We had 60 minutes at 65 degrees and 10 minutes at 75 degrees, as per the instructions over here on our mashing guideline. I shall now raise the basket and we'll start our sparging. Okay, for the Brewster beacon now, we are now getting ready for our sparge stage. Just like to comment on this one, 8.5 kilograms of grain with that water. That was a heavy lift. Good thing about the Brewster beacon, you have these little clips here which allows you to do a 2-stage lift. Thank God for that at my age. Okay, ready for the sparge. Generally I would use a fly sparge. I have a tool that fits on here, it's just down there. This would generally fit on here, and I do a fly sparge. Due to the volume of the mash, unfortunately I'm not able to move the middle tube, therefore just going to have to do a normal pour of the water on here. This has been heated to 75 degrees in the hot water tank, and I'm now going to transfer approximately 11 litres of this at 75 degrees on top of here and sparge out. I'll rejoin this at the boil. Mash is now complete, and we've now set ready for the boil. So we're going to wait till we get up to temperature. We've got just over 30 litres of wort in the kettle, and we should have 31.1, so we're not far away there. Could possibly add a bit more. Our gravity reading, pre-boil gravity, you can see that there should be 1.069. We've come in at 1.070. So I'll add half a litre of water there from the boiler, just to bring it down to 1.69, so we hit our target. So very pleased with that. Okay, here's our hops for our brew. We're going to be doing 70 grams of Chinook at 90 minutes, then 50 grams of Cascade and 50 grams of Simcoe at flame out. And what I will also be doing is whirlpooling at flame out. They haven't requested whirlpooling, but I'm going to give it a try on this brew just to see how we get on. We've now reached our boil temperature, and as you can see, we've got a nice gentle boil going on the back there. It will generally grow a little bit, but I'm happy at the moment. So we've got our 70 grams of Chinook into the hop spider. Get it all out. There we go. Into the hop spider. We'll come back towards the end of the brew. 15 minutes in, and it looks like we've got a lovely rolling boil. So we'll now leave this until the end of the 90, where we'll include our hops. Made a slight error before. It's not 50 grams of Simcoe and 50 grams of Cascade. It's 100 grams of Simcoe and 100 grams of Cascade. Okay, we're now near the end of boil. We have 2 minutes to go. I didn't record it, but I inserted the chiller at 15 minutes and a Warflock tablet just to help clear it all up. So in a second, once the beeper goes off, we'll turn it all off, we'll start the chiller, and we'll include the Simcoe and the Cascade, 100 grams of each. I showed the wrong packet last time, so here's the Malt Miller Simcoe and the Malt Miller Cascade. Okay, both Cascade and Simcoe have been added. It's definitely filled it all up and the pump is on, and we'll now put on the chiller and start to cool it. Okay, for the techie people out there, as you can see, we've got the whirlpool going nicely, and all the hobs I've just added have all sort of blended in quite nicely there, and it's slowly chilling down. I expect it to chill quite quickly today because of the temperature. I'm pleased to say that if you look at our numbers, our post-boil size should have been 27.3. We actually come in at 26.9. You know, a lot of people aren't worried about numbers, I know that. But I'm pleased to say our pre-boil gravity was 1.069, and our gravity now is 1.079. So we appear to all of the numbers. Well pleased, absolutely amazed. Okay, temperature's now down to 28.2. Obviously we're going to pitch yeast at about 25, and with the temperature at the shed at the moment around about 10-12 degrees, I'm sure by the time we've got all the malt out, we'll be down to temperature. So with the Brewster beacon, I use the pump with an extension tube going straight into the bucket, For this particular brew, because I put the hops direct into the boiler at the end rather than any form of muslin sack or hop spider, I've just put a filter on here just to take any large lumps out from the initial pump. But at the moment it's all looking good. As you can see, we've come in at about 1.079, which is where we need to be. So very happy with today's brew. As you can see, it's clear as a bell, really nice, and I must say, smells beautiful. Okay, brew day nearly over. We've got roughly 24 litres, which is a litre more than they state. As you can see, lovely aerated. I'll sprinkle the yeast. This is US-05, by the way, US-05 yeast. I'll sprinkle that over the top. Get my spoon. I'll give that a little stir in, maybe aerate a little bit with a spoon, and then that should do us. Okay, we're going to stir the yeast in. Give it a bit of aeration. And we're good to go in the fermenting fridge. As I mentioned earlier, for those that are techie on numbers, I did purchase myself a tilt of a nice chap on eBay. I'll try and put his email at the bottom of the link. But yeah, put this on there, stick that into our brew, and hopefully I'll be able to share with you the details from the ice spindle. Maybe, you know, give it a couple of days to settle down, and I'll share those details. Okay, the brew is now nicely done for the day. Just a horrible job of tidying up. But the wort is now lovely in the fermentation fridge. That will ferment now at 20 degrees. And as I say, I'll come back in a couple of days, show you this. And once the fermentation has stopped, I'll estimate about 7 to 8 days, we'll then do the dry hopping. As I mentioned earlier, during the brew, I purchased an ice spindle. I've used it on a couple of brews now, and it's really for, I suppose, for the techie side. Really, it's just it adds to the the fun of the hobby. But as you can see here, you can monitor all your temperatures, which are along the bottom here. As you can see from the fermenting fridge that I use, I've got fairly consistent. I'm here between 19, 20 degrees, fairly consistent here, and you can see here. This is the gravity reading, how it's slowly going down. You can see we're on day 7. Currently sitting at 6.2%. We're down at 103.2. And our temperature today, at this particular moment in time, is 19.1. So again, some people would say, is it worth it? But it's a hobby. I don't play golf. Good morning and welcome back to Shenfield Shed. So, how's our beer doing? We're at day 14, slightly longer than expected. Normally mine are done a lot quicker than that, but she's reached the gravity we want. We're about 1019, so we're near the end. And today we're going to be doing our dry hopping. As you can see here, we've got 50 grams of Cascade and 50 grams of Simcoe. It's going to go in for about 3 days. So let's prepare. Okay, the muslin bags are in sanitising solution. They've been in about 20 minutes or so. As you can see, I've got 2 separate bags. I'm going to use the muslin bag way of doing it today, rather than any sort of hop spider or hop tea, they call it. I also have half a dozen or so of the marbles. I tend to use the marbles inside the muslin sack with the hops. It just helps to weigh them down. Initially, when you put them in the top, it will sit there till it soaks in. Until the malt soaks into the grains, then it eventually drop down. But with this, it helps it go to the bottom. Main reason is, I can sort of use it here, if your hops are at the bottom here eventually, as we all know, heat rises. So with the hops at the bottom here and the heat rising, the hop flavours will move up and throughout the beer during that stage. So rather than just sitting at the top, and sometimes they do, people always say to you, well, if you put them in there, the bag will sink anyway. But you've got to remember, we've only got 3 days. That's what they've recommended. If we sit them here, it could be a day and a half before they get heavy enough to drop down. So with this, I would imagine within a couple of hours they'll be down to the bottom, and with the continuation and the recirculation, that's going to give a lovely little bit of hop flavour and hop flow. Okay, I'll get these in the bag. As I said before, 50 grams of Simcoe and 50 grams of Cascade. I've got these in the bag, and we'll pop them into the bucket. Okay, here we go. We'll slowly lift the lid off the bucket. As you can see in there, we've still got a bit of activity there, but not much. Some people say be careful of getting too much oxygen in, so like I say, try not to shake it around too much, but sometimes you have to do these things. So we'll place that one in there, and as you can see, it's almost dropped to the bottom straight away, and we'll drop that one in that side, almost dropped to the bottom straight away. So we'll now close the lid down, and we'll come back in 3 days and begin the cold crush. For this particular beer, we're going to cold crush. We're going to reduce the beer down to about 2.5 degrees. Leave that for maybe 3 to 4 days just to get down to temperature. That will allow all the trub and all the things to settle at the bottom, make a nice yeast cake. I feel that it does give better clarity beer, but we can check that when it comes out. But as you see, I've now set to 2.6. It's now cooling, so we'll come back in 3 to 4 days and we'll begin our bottling. Today is bottling and kegging day. Obviously we've got 23 litres of wort. Be looking to try and get at least 22 out of the fermenter, you know, allowing for the debris at the bottom. So what I'll do, I'll put some into the keg, but what I've also chosen to do is I'm going to bottle 12 300ml bottles. So that will give us 3.6 litres. I'm looking for a CO2 volume of about 2.5. Obviously I'll be storing these beers at 20 degrees initially, so that will give my table sugar as 23.6 grams. So I'll get that mixed up and put into the bottles, and the remainder will go into the keg, and we'll follow up on that shortly. Okay, we've measured out our sugar solution. It's meant to be 23.6, but I don't have one that measures down in those increments, so we're at 24, so that should be good enough. We've now got our water solution. I tend to use my sugar by a syringe, so we've got 12 bottles, so I measure out 12 of these into a pan. I shall boil this up, add the sugar, put a bit of silver foil over the top just to stop it getting any, stop any nasties getting in, and then we'll put these into the bottle. As I mentioned earlier, we're doing both bottling and kegging today, so obviously sanitisation is critical at this point, that and any oxygen into your beer. So let's put all our caps on top of here. This is a bottling tree, as you can see here. Brilliant for this sort of job, really speeds the day up. Simply prime the pump, push your bottles on, as you can see, push up and down. Chem sand all goes up inside the bottle. You can make sure it gets really in there. Job done, a lot quicker. Put it on the side, move on to your next one. Okay, we've attached the bottling wand to the bottom of the fermenter. Primed it, and we're now getting ready to start beginning topping up our bottles. Quite easy to do with the bottle wand. As you can see, it's got a little valve on the end. As you push it, the beer flows through, and the ideal thing is when it gets to the top, you lift it out and it leaves the correct amount of space on the top of the bottles for your capping. And as we say with Star Sound, don't fear the bubbles. As you can see the bubbles coming over the top here. Hopefully you can see this, where we're slowly filling the bottle from the bottling wand, and we're getting near our top. There we go, and we'll just pull it out, and that'd be the right gap between the top of the bottle and the top of the wort, ready for our sugar. So in a second I'll go along and I will put the sugar in. I generally do the sugar at the end. I won't show you all 12 bottles. I'll come back when we're ready in the sugar. As I spoke about earlier, I use a syringe for the sugar. Not everybody's preference, but I just find it gives me consistency. We've mixed up the solution. This has all been boiled, so we're ready. So it's a simple case of just taking a measure of the sugar solution, like so, and we just put this into the top of the bottle. Do this across all of the bottles and get consistent amounts, consistent CO2, and I found in the past that it works very well. Okay, 12 bottles all full up with beer. As you see, the last one to go. Simply a case of just pushing the cap on.
I tend to use the desktop capper rather than the hand one. I did try a hand one before, but I went through 2 or 3 of them and they just didn't last long. This one I've had now for 18 months. I tend to overdo it, I think, by turning it, but it feels good, works very well. As previously mentioned, I'm going to both bottle and keg. This is the first time I've kegged, so it'll be interesting to hear how this turns out. It's all been cleaned and sanitised. If you can see down inside there. What I'm going to do now, from watching the YouTube, I'm now going to purge this with some of my CO2 gas that's there. Put this into the bottle, purge it to get rid of all the air, and hopefully there'll just be CO2 in there. So then I'll purge the cap again before I take it off, and I'll show you that up at the shed, and then we'll begin filling it up, and hopefully we won't get any bad oxidants in there. Okay, as mentioned before, this has been all sanitised and cleaned out. I've filled the tank with CO2 to push all the oxygen out. So what I shall now do is just purge it, putting the cap on top. This just makes sure the air is out of there. Now, in theory, when you take this off, you can now see, you can't see from the shot, but there's a lot of steam and oxygen or CO2 sitting in there. So what I'll now do, I'll now put the tube in. I'll put the tube right at the bottom as far as I can go. What we don't want is any splashing. We don't want to introduce any oxygen into this beer. We'll open the valve up. And we'll begin our filling. Okay, I'm not too sure if we can see in there, but you can still see a little bit of a haze from the CO2, which is good because that means there's no oxygen going in there. We're now topping up the keg, and I must say, for the first time using a keg, this is a lot quicker than filling up 40 bottles of beer. But again, we'll see what it's like at the end, once we get down to the tasting stage. So now, once we've got here, I'll put this onto the CO2 kegerator. I shall leave this for about a week and a bit. As mentioned earlier, this is the first time kegging, so I'm going to go back to my old favourite, the old brewer's friend. Got the keg carbonation guide. I've set myself to metric. My CO2 volume, 2.7. I've come in here, it's a black IPA. I think it sits in the American ales and lagers regions, you know, possibly between a Belgium ale and here, but I've gone 2.7. I do like a bit of, you know, head of my beers. So I set for 2.7. My keg temperature is going to be 5.6. As you can see here, as it says, I've got to set my regulator at 1.07. I'm not going to try forced carbonating, especially being my first time. I'm going to leave it here for about a week, give it a try, and hopefully come back to you with a nice quality beer. Welcome back to Shenfield Shed, and the last part of the black IPA instalment of Grain to Glass. It's been the keg now for 7 days, so let's give it a pour and see what it looks like. Well, it's definitely a nice black IPA, that's for sure. And it seems to have carved up quite nicely. Difficult to tell on the camera, but the beer looks very, very clear. And look at that. Now down to the most important bit of all of your brews, the tasting. What can I say? That is lovely. Not too sure about IPA. It's got a very much of a stout taste, and feels very heavy. And as you can see on the side here, the way it's all sticking to the glass, it's got a nice bit of carbonation on there. But I've got to say, that is a lovely beer. So, thank you for watching. Sorry it's been so long. Bit of a long video, but hopefully you've enjoyed it. And look forward to any feedback. If you like it, please like. If you want to subscribe, please subscribe. Thank you.